Check, check. 1, 2. Check, 1, 2. Check, 1, 2. Check, 1, 2. 2. Check, 1, 2. Check, check, check. 1, 2, 1, 2. Check, check, 1, 2. How does this sound different? Check, 1, 2. Check, 1, 2. Check, 1, 2. Check, 1, 2. Check, check, 1, 2. Check, 1, 2. Check, check. Check, 1, 2. Hey, hey, hey. This is gonna be even crazier now. Okay. I can boost this up. Okay, and then I will boost this. Check, check. Ooh. Check, check. Hey. Check, check, check. Check, 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 check. 1, 2. Check, check. Check, 1, 2. Check, check.
say my spiel.
And then I'll just quickly switch over to the... you want me to have the video up as you go up? I can have it up and pause. That might be better than me switching it. Let me do that. Let me just get it set up real quick. Because it's just a blank screen.
Yeah, that's good. Just checking, right? Bill, Lindsay, Tamara, Naomi, Sarah. High fives for everybody. High fives. You're the cleanup lineup. You're going to be awesome. I will introduce you twice as well as everybody else. Woo! All right. Hello, welcome to the second half of Ignite. Clearly, some of you took my advice. You're talking to each other. We are very happy to see that, but we have an agenda. We have the second half of the lineup for you. Before we begin the second half of Ignite Seattle 29, we have a special treat for you. Special treat, because you are special to me. You're special. We laugh at that. You're special to me. I have a story to tell you about a Kickstarter project called We Make Seattle. Have any of you heard of this project, We Make Seattle? All right. That's fantastic because it funded itself because of your help about 3 years ago. Any backers in the audience? Yes, thank you. You guys rock. Okay. So the story of this film was me and another fine gentleman named Brian Zug. We heard about this interest among Seattle entrepreneurs and creatives to have the story of Seattle told to the country about how awesome a place is, how awesome Seattle is as a place for creatives and entrepreneurs of all kinds. And we heard this complaint, why isn't there a film about this? And I'm like, hey, I'm a creative person. I write things. I could probably work on this. Brian Zug is the founder of Bootstrapper Studios. I went to him and said, hey, why don't we do this? We did a Kickstarter project. 261 people who were faithful or crazy gave us money. We raised $30,000. We've been working very hard on this film, and it's finally about to launch. I am going to show you the world premiere of the trailer for the film. You want to see it? Yeah, all right. Please show the trailer.
I think Seattle's a good place for creative people because, well, there's just a lot of us.
There are a lot of really hungry people that are resourceful and generous, savvy people. People who aren't just good at what they do, but that know how important it is to be able to work together. They're looking to join something, be a part of something, a movement, not just a job.
The goal was to make a gift to give back to Seattle, to have companies and entrepreneurs use this to help recruit people and talent and clients to want to come and work with you or work with us here. Please save the date, Thursday, March 24th. Follow us at We Make Seattle. You'll hear a lot of it if you're in the Ignite community or the We Make Seattle. You follow us in any way. So thank you for letting us indulge ourselves and share that with you. Thank you. We love Seattle. We make Seattle. And now we're going to make more presentations. So first up in our second half, our stellar second half lineup, Bill Burnett is going to talk to you about de-isolation and overcoming social anxiety. Please welcome him to the stage.
I spent most of my life terrified of interacting with people, especially ones I didn't know. Social anxiety might seem odd to those of you here tonight who are social superstars, who are like totally at ease around strangers. You would never cut a conversation short just because it's going well. Whereas I've often thought, hey, this conversation is going great. If I end it now, I can leave without them thinking I'm weird. I would see a graph in my head plotting time against catastrophe. My mind is a Hubble telescope constantly scanning for reasons to freak out. Like, Should I make small talk? Be deep. Make a joke. Am I talking too much, too little? Am I making enough eye contact? Am I making too much eye contact? My eye contact is really intense. Maybe I shouldn't make any eye contact at all, but then it's weird that I'm not making any eye contact. And they're like, 16-ounce soy latte for Bill. I explained all this to a therapist in the 90s I was seeing for addiction, and he said, wow, if I had to go through all that every time I left the house, I'd use drugs too. So about 6 years ago, I hit a wall of emotional pain, and I decided to break out of that isolation. I started getting out to meetups. The first thing was a meetup for fans of a Firefly. I found other meetups to go to, talked to people after 12-step meetings, did kirtan, Sanskrit devotional singing. I even did OkCupid. So, lesson, find ways to be around people who share your interests or demographic and show up regularly. I tried to mimic my idea of how popular people acted, like talk slowly, smile for no reason, laugh at my own jokes. But I found that it was more helpful to keep a calm, happy energy on the inside with mindfulness techniques. So lesson, focus on your inner energy first and your outer interaction second. I could say one thing that was uncool or accidentally offensive and then cringe for days playing it over and over in my head. Like, God, I'm such an idiot. I can't believe I tried to show them pictures of my cats. But I told myself, let it go. You got out and interacted with people. Even if you did screw it up, it's a win. Lesson, failure is progress. And rejection is the means to finding your people. All my life, I felt so much pressure in conversation to prove that I was witty or smart or something. Turns out, I didn't need to be interesting to make friends. I needed to find them interesting. So I would ask people about themselves, listen, and imagine myself in their life. Lesson, it's fine to impress people, but it's more important to be impressed. I learned that it's best not to argue unless I can do it with a smile. Visceral anger rarely attracts people. I kind of treated it like Facebook, like the stuff I like, ignore the other stuff, and occasionally defriend people. Lesson, when somebody is wrong about something, God is okay with you not pointing it out. So I went from being nearly homebound to getting out most nights of the week for years now. I'm very comfortable around people. I have my own meetup. So if you suffer from social anxiety, you're not alone and you're not doomed. You can change patterns of thought and behavior that have ruled your life for years or decades. So if you want to learn more, I do a one-man show called Becoming More Less Crazy. It's ridiculously dark comedy about how I stopped wanting to kill myself, quit drugs, lost 117 pounds, and overcame social anxiety. You can buy tickets. There's a show Saturday at morelesscrazy.com, or find out about the next ones, or come talk to me. I promise I won't try to show you pictures of my cats.
Great job, Bill. Great job. Next up is Lindsay Wilson, who's going to talk about why she's bringing robots to prison. Please welcome her to the stage.
Hi, my name is Lindsay, and software is what I do. And today I'm going to talk about tech, about robots, and about how I'm using them to solve a problem that's often invisible right here in our community. That problem is recidivism. And it's okay, I had to Google it too at one point. Recidivism is when someone who has been released from prison returns to prison. And the big deal about that is that here in Washington, 1 in 2 people who are released from prison will return within their lifetime. Now, we have 8,000 people who are being released from prison in Washington each year. And that means that 4,000 are going to go back. That is at a cost of $34,000 a year of your taxpayer money, at a cost of 4,000 crimes being committed right here in our community, and at a cost of 4,000 families that are torn apart by the impact of recidivism. Now, no one who's in prison wants to go back. Prison is awful, and every time I go to prison, I only ever meet people who can't wait to get out, can't wait to rebuild their lives, because prison is awful and traumatic. So why do people recidivate? Well, they commit crimes, but it's very important to be aware of the demographics that we have in our prison today. On average, someone going into prison has an income level of $12,000 a year, an average education of 10th grade, and hey folks, we got rid of higher education in prison quite some time ago. And third, we have an average unemployment rate of 60%. Now, when folks get out of prison, it doesn't get any better, because they're faced with the stigma of a criminal record. And even in our culturally progressive and empathetic city, it's incredibly difficult to find an employer who's willing to give you a second chance. This is where the robots come in. Because we know that professional skills and education reduce recidivism. We know that, thank you, we have a ton of jobs in tech in Seattle. You know, guys. And third, and most importantly, programming and tech is built on the foundation that it doesn't matter what you look like, where you're from, how you dress. If you can write good code, you can get a job. Thank you. I'm the co-founder of an organization called Unloop, and we are working today to enable people who've been in prison to succeed in careers in tech and break that cycle of recidivism. Thank you. Last year, I went to prison for the first time in my life as a visitor. Thank you. And I visited a programming class that exists today at Clallam Bay. I met people who had built a first-person 3D shooter video game from scratch, a file-sharing app from scratch, all without internet, without Stack Overflow. Right? Last month, I went to prison. I went to a women's prison. We brought these robots into prison. This woman programmed her robot to navigate a maze and avoid obstacles and flash lights when obstacles approached. It was fucking awesome. And every time I go to prison, I am struck by the untapped creative and intellectual potential we have sitting behind bars today, idle and without opportunity. Now, today, my organization is working to provide that opportunity. It's not that difficult. We are setting up year-long educational programs so folks can learn how to become computer programmers. In Orange is the New Black, they made panties in prison. We're setting up a web dev shop in prison so folks can get the work experience they need to hit the ground running when they get out. And third, and most importantly, we are setting up an ongoing model for community support. Folks, that is all of you here in the room today. We already saw a presentation on community. There are a number of ways you can get involved. Number one, we are hiring paid instructors for our year-long courses. Tell your mom, tell your friends, everyone you know. Number two, volunteer. Volunteer at a workshop on our curriculum, even non-tech things, you name it, we need it. And third, and very importantly, we need tech employers, you, your boss, to give folks an opportunity. That could be just an interview, that could be an internship. And lastly, I invite you all here today to come to prison with me. Send me an email, I will take you inside. I promise I will take you back outside at the end of the day. Thank you for your time.
Great job. That was awesome. Whew. what to do with your surplus. Uber for cheese, teach prisoners how to get out of prison and not go back. I think there's a clear choice there. Next up, a more personal story. Tamara Clammer is going to talk to you about how the super loop saved her. Please welcome her to the stage, Tamara.
At the time, I'd lived in this same little town, gone to the same school with 23 kids my whole life. Every class has one, that weird kid nobody likes. I was daydreaming, so the teacher sent me out into the hallway where I couldn't distract the others. I never did my homework, never studied, but somehow I always passed my tests. My guidance counselor said, "You're clearly not college material, just get married, or maybe get a factory job." I was 17 years old, it was 1984, and I was a failure. Later that summer, I went to the county fair. Upside down in that brief moment when the Superloop pauses to change direction, the girl next to me said, "I just joined the Army. I leave next week." And I thought, oh, I can do that too. Suddenly, my escape from the cornfields was in sight. But it wasn't that easy. I failed the physical because I was underweight, and I was devastated. But they told me I could come back in 18 months to try again. Since I was stuck in the cornfields a little longer, I bought a car. And then everyone said, "Wow, your boyfriend has such a nice car." But it was a beautiful piece of junk. To drive it, I had to fix it. But to fix it, I had to figure out how, without the help of the internet. Finally, it was time to try again. Victory starts here. I sold the car and spent my first 6 months at Fort Jackson, South Carolina. In rapid succession, I learned several very important things about myself. This is what I look like when I'm listening. No wonder my teachers thought I was daydreaming. My eidetic memory, or actually I'm a bit ahead. You might wonder how I'm getting away with drifting off into space with drill sergeants and not being in trouble. My eidetic, or photographic memory as it's often called, became obvious to all of us when I learned my general orders, the code of conduct, and the phonetic alphabet in a fraction of the time as my fellow recruits. But in my case, my amazing memory was masking and compensating for undetected dyslexia, which became obvious to all of us when I marched my troops into the trees for the second time. And suddenly, all those high school detentions made sense. In spite of my questionable push-ups, my drill sergeants genuinely seemed to believe in me. And somehow, I started to believe in myself. It was the weirdest thing. For the first time in my life, my accomplishments were being recognized, rewarded even. 4 years later, I was promoted to sergeant. 2 years after that, I was selected for drill sergeant school myself, a huge honor for any non-commissioned officer. Sadly, my orders came the day after I'd signed out of the Army. But this presentation is not meant to be propaganda for joining the military. Instead, it's a lesson in how a catalyst can come in any shape or size and change everything, and why we need to be brave enough to let it. Fail early, fail often. You've probably heard this before. It took me a few dozen times before it didn't hurt anymore, and I could begin to see that my early struggles were actually valuable learning opportunities. And those struggles have a name: twice exceptional. Researchers are now studying gifted students with learning disabilities, and what they're finding is that the two cancel each other out, causing the student to seem average but underachieving and lazy. We now know otherwise, but in the beginning, the world was flat. New information can cause dramatic changes. This new information about myself caused me to realize I'm not a failure at all. And I was finally able to start putting together some sort of a plan for success. I disregarded the guidance counselor's advice and took some classes. After my second quarter at Pierce College, guess what? I was invited to join Phi Theta Kappa, the International Honor Society. It's not that I couldn't learn. I just learned differently. Me and about 5% of the population. What I'd been doing all along is called self-directed learning. When I owned the Mustang, I taught myself to fix it to keep it running. Later, I became interested in the events industry. After coordinating 1,500 events here at Town Hall, I taught myself leatherworking and became an artist. Now I'm focused on that intersection between art, tech, and trash, and I'm curious to see where that will lead. Today we have access to learn whatever our hearts desire. As you learn, share what you know with others. Teach a class, host a meetup, believe in someone long enough for them to figure out how to believe in themselves. They might have been that weird kid too. Thank you for letting me share my story with you. I'm Tamara Clammer, one of the doers at Brown Paper Tickets. I would like to leave you with one request. Never stop learning. Thank you.
Thank you. One of the confusing things about the arts and creative fields is that there's an abundance of books to buy and music to listen to. We take for granted how hard the path can be, even for talented people, to reach a level of success that would even enter our radar. The next talk by Tayomi Tomke is titled, How I Went from Blogger to Pro Food Writer in 10 Short Years. Please welcome her to the stage.
When people find out that I make my living as a food writer, they always ask me one of three questions. What's the weirdest thing I've ever eaten? Do I get a lot of free food? And how can they get my job? The answers are unclean pig intestine at a market in Laos. Yes, but the free food is rarely the good food. And I don't know how you can get my job, but I can tell you how I got here. Being lucky, working really fucking hard, and always asking for what I wanted, namely, can I work for you, and can you pay me more money for that? I was lucky because I was raised by two wonderful people with stable jobs. I went to good schools, Garfield, and when I graduated, I didn't have to support my family. I was lucky, but I did not luck into being a food writer. For that, I hustled, and I constantly asked for more. More work, more opportunities, and more money. 10 years ago, I asked the first question. I wrote to the food writer, Jonathan Kaufman, and I said, so I think I want to be a food writer. Could you give me any advice on how to do that? I figured the worst thing he could say was no, but he didn't. Maybe because he's a nice guy, but definitely because I asked. So Jonathan gave me the same advice anyone has ever given a budding writer. Start writing. Namely, he suggested I start a food blog, and so I did. For the first 5 years and 300 blog posts, nobody paid me. Possibly because I had no idea what I was doing, but definitely because I didn't ask. In October 2011, I was laid off from my day job. At that point, I knew a little bit better what I was doing, and I bought a camera. I sort of thought maybe I could make a little extra money on the side while I was unemployed. So I wrote to the food editor at the Seattle Weekly, and I asked to write for the paper. I figured if she said no, I'd be right where I started. But she didn't, so I had a column on my hands. I wasn't the best writer in Seattle. I didn't know the most about food, but I was willing to work hard. I would turn that column in on time every week, and most of all, I asked for that column. Unless you're a celebrity, a genius, or maybe friends with an editor, nobody's going to call you up and say, hey, would you like to write a 3,500-word cover story for us on Seattle's best restaurants? We'll pay expenses. You do not get what you don't ask for. But soon, I was back at a new day job, and I continued to write for pay, but it was my side piece. Then I started talking to Como News' lifestyle site about a column. They asked me how much I wanted. I asked for a rate 7.5 times what I'd made at the Weekly. They said yes. I was off. I started emailing more editors, pitching more publications. I stopped saying yes when someone said, we'd love you to write, but we can only pay you whatever paltry rate. They could ask me to write for $25 a column. The worst I could say was no, and I did. But if I was making this much on the side, could I double that if it were my full-time job? Triple it? So in October 2014, I quit that day job. I spent my newfound freedom emailing editors. I was moderately successful, but I only made about half of what I'd made in my day job. So I hired a pitch coach, and within 3 sessions, I'd sold 2 pieces to my dream publication. What did the pitch coach teach me? Honestly, not a whole lot, but she made me accountable to her to pitch. I could no longer pitch lower paying, less exciting places to build up. I had to pitch that place this week and report back. I'd been playing around in the kiddie pool when I should have been throwing bait to the sharks. All I had to do was ask for what I wanted. So I asked for more. I asked bigger and better places. And when they said yes, I stopped writing for a place that paid me less money. I drew a line in the sand. I would no longer write for less than $50, $100, $150. If they offered me less, I asked for more money. Sometimes I got it, sometimes I didn't. The worst they could say was no. It took 8 months from when I first quit my day job to when I made the same amount of money as a food writer. It took 10 years from when I first emailed Jonathan Kaufman and asked, how do I become a food writer? But I made it. And 2 questions got me there. Can I work for you? And can you pay me more money for that? I'm Naomi Tomke. You can Google my name. My writing is all over the internet. And you can follow me on Twitter at Gastronome and on Instagram at _gastronome. Thank you.
Good job. Thank you. We cover a lot of ground so far tonight, I think. Economics, Spider-Man, sex, all kinds of different cool stuff. We're going to go another direction today, something more personal, but affects us all, about the question of how do we know who we are. Sarah Novotny is going to talk to you. The title of her talk is Yes, I Am Having an Identity Crisis. Please welcome her to the stage.
On a Thursday morning, I finished a talk, walked off stage, and took a call from my doctor. With that call, an ancillary characteristic of me became my focal point for the next 4 months. Because my cancer was diagnosed early, I had all sorts of options. I was able to schedule my surgery 6 weeks out after an event I was planning. I chose a double mastectomy because the most important thing for me was event-free survival. The pathology that came back told me there was nothing in my lymph nodes except tattoo ink. I needed no chemo, I needed no radiation. But what I want to talk about here is the single most asked question that I heard leading up to and after my surgery. Are you having an identity crisis? No, I'm not having an identity crisis. But this presumes a lot to me about and how we value women in society. No one asked me if I had an identity crisis when I had my appendix out or I broke my foot. I am someone who identifies with what I do. I work, I support friends, I support my partner. I want to be engaged with communities. I want to participate in the world. But I had to take these areas where I expected to be valued for my contribution and talk to them about my secondary sexual characteristics. How would I actually know if I was having an identity crisis at this point? After my surgery, I went back to work after 3 weeks. After 4 weeks, I was traveling again, and I was happier with my shape than I was before the surgery. But I had no stamina. I had no ability to answer emails. I had the attention span of a single crossword puzzle clue. If I can't write an articulate sentence, or I'm 3,000 emails behind, and yes, that's true, am I more? Am I less? How am I valued? Crap, I am having an identity crisis. With my internal cues failing, I looked to the societal cues, but those are worse. I'm not my wallet, I'm not my shape, I'm not my accomplishments. I had to find a better way to measure this. The media and peer groups tell me